Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the program manager at the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat, but before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items, our code of conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I will be sharing the link in the chat for our channel. And if you have not been on a live stream to YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to have access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now, and if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through social media or on our website. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speaker here for today, Justin and Julia. Hello, welcome back.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
We're very excited.
No.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're very excited to have you on. Thank you for being here, and take it away.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much, Alexia. It's always a pleasure to be here on Reactor. I love it here. I love meeting new people and just learning some new cool stuff. So thank you so much for having us. My name is Julia. I work at Microsoft as a cloud advocate in the JavaScript team. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. It's 3 p.m. right now, and I'm super excited to spend the next hour or so with you all. I'm joined by my colleague, Justin, who I'll also invite to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. This is Justin. So it's actually a Chuseok in South Korea. I'm based in South Korea, and it's public holiday. But I'm really happy to be here to talk about this kind of awesome session with Julia. So I'm Justin, and I work for the Microsoft as a principal cloud advocate. So as you can see the slide, so we are talking about Azure API Center. So Julia, so what is Azure API Center?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll actually move on to the next slide and kind of see what we have in store for the next few minutes. So I think I'm the one sharing the slides. Yeah, so quick one, we'll answer that question in a few. But what I'd like to do is, before we even get deeper into the product, I'd like to start with why you should care piece of the equation. So we'll have a problem statement. Since today we'll be here to talk about a new product on Azure, we'll first spend some time looking through the problem that this product will be solving. So we'll kind of have some bit of background to help us understand why should we even care about API Center in the first place. Then we'll get to define what API Center is. Then we'll also look at some of the benefits that API Center provides for your organization. We'll do a deep dive into 2 or 3 benefits through some demos, so also stay tuned for that. And then towards the end, we'll have some time for some Q&A. So that's pretty much how we plan to spend the next 55 or so minutes. So please do stay tuned. We hope to have a very engaging session. So if you have questions on as we continue, please drop them on the chat. We have Alexia who will help us kind of just keep tabs of the questions. We'll take some as we keep presenting, and then we'll push some to just respond to them towards the end of the session. So at any given time, just drop your questions and we'll be happy to interact on the chat.
Awesome.
Yeah. So next slide. Are my slides actually moving? If we can get to the next slide. Okay, super. Yeah, so good news is that we already have a LAN module out there that has the content that will be covered on this stream. So you can always visit this LAN module at your own time for a self-paced learning experience. The link is on the screen and it will also be dropped on the chat. So click on that to engage with the LAN module And we also have a QR code that you can scan to quickly get started with the module. So we're really eager to hear your feedback on this module. I hope that it will get you onboarded with using API Center. So having said that, Justin, I think it's time we got started.
Sure. Thanks, Julia, for the introduction. Now, so when you have a see on this slide, so many companies have transformed their organization structure with more software-centric, which we call digital transformation. Under this transformation, each organization has the increased number of systems, and they have to communicate with each other through APIs. In other words, the usage of APIs have been exponentially increasing. Modern web and mobile web application development has involved front-end applications calling APIs at backend, and even between backend APIs, backend applications. So in addition to that, the microservice architecture we introduced and low-code, no-code platforms have resulted in the consumption of APIs being exploded. As a result, APIs are used as a building blocks for the internal reusability and integrated data flow processes. So as you can see the diagram in here, and there are numbers in the slide. Small and medium-sized companies have their APIs as many as 500 around, while the large enterprise clients have far more than that, like tens of thousands of APIs in their organization. Last year, Postman published a report called State of the API. And the report says the companies will invest more on the API side for their productivity increase. But there are challenges we face because of the explosion of APIs. For example, APIs are fragmented, often are resulted in API sprawl. It is because APIs are poorly managed, and because of that, they are not visible any longer within their organization. These unmanaged and invisible APIs are sometimes a target of their security risk by the attackers, and poorly designed APIs have brought about organizations' compliance issues. Those poorly managed APIs have also resulted in developing duplicated APIs, which would cause more API sprawls because they don't see each other. So it is clear that while APIs are powerful, we should carefully manage them and keep their potential benefits, right? So the APIs, when you see that, so the APIs in our organizations are growing and managed, meaning they live anywhere and everywhere. It's not just on Azure, it's on everywhere. These growing APIs add another layer of complexity in terms of the management. So we need a centralized point to track and manage those APIs. So, Julia, what's the solution that Microsoft suggests to the developers and decision makers?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Justin, for sharing that background. I think at this point we now understand what problem we're trying to address here. So without a doubt, more and more organizations will keep adopting an API-first approach in their product development. And Microsoft's response to this organizational need is a new service on Azure called Azure API Center that is aimed at addressing most, if not all, of these challenges. So these challenges are being brought about by the proliferation of APIs today. And so we're going to see more of how API Center is actually going to help us kind of tackle some of these challenges. Next slide. Right. So what is Azure API Center? API Center is your one-stop shop for a centralized inventory of APIs for seamless governance, discovery, and consumption of APIs. What this means is that with an API Center for your organization, API teams from the producers to the admins and even to the consumers will have a central location with all the APIs, regardless of where these APIs have been deployed, and also regardless of the API type and the lifecycle stage. So your current API ecosystem may be distributed across multiple gateways or even sitting on different cloud platforms. But API Center allows you to add all these APIs into a single instance to track and manage them by enforcing policies that cut across all these APIs. But enough of just talking about API Center. Let's hop on the Azure portal and kind of see it in action. So I'm going to move over to my browser, where I'm going to be sharing. I have my Azure portal on the screen. So if it's your first time interacting with API Center, right here on the search bar, you can quickly just look for API Centers. It's at the very top because I've been using it pretty much of late. So I currently have two, but you can be able to create a new API Center instance right here. So I'm just going to open one that we already have in my subscription. And as you can see, let me just minimize this to have more working room. We have quite a lot. We have quite a lot in terms of what you can do with API Center. So, for example, I'm currently running a free tier of API Center. So we have two pricing options. You can go with a free tier, which allows you to register up to 5 APIs. Up to 5 APIs. But then, you can actually register up to 200 APIs, out of which 5 will have full access to all API Center capabilities. And then we have the standard tier, in which you can add all the APIs that you have, and all those APIs will have access to all the API Center capabilities. So that's always interesting to know. So right now for this demo, I'm running on the free tier, so you can see what's possible. So the first thing we're going to look at, we have this assets section once you create the API Center instance. And under the assets, we have 3 kind of categories. Let's start with the APIs, because this is pretty straightforward. So this is where you have all your APIs registered. So the APIs that are currently running in your organization, this is where you kind of add the APIs. And as you can see, I have 4. And to add a new API, you simply just click on the register an API button, and you would be able to add an API by providing this required information. As we mentioned, you can add APIs regardless of their type. So it doesn't matter what type you're working with. These are the supported API types. And then you also add in your versioning information. So that's also something that you'll get to see here. Then you have some optional information that you can also add. Licensing, if you have any external documentation, if you want to add any contact information, that's pretty much what you can do to register a new API into your API Center instance. So I'll discard that. Then the next thing is the metadata, which contains either built-in properties for your APIs. But on top of that, with API Center, you can also add in custom metadata to help you organize your APIs even more. So that's something that you can also see here. So for example, you can see that for the APIs that I have in my API Center, we have this custom metadata. So for instance, for each API, we are asking that whoever registers a new API actually adds in a link to their repo, and also a confirmation on whether the API passed the compliance review stage. So this is how you can kind of have your own defined metadata and properties that can help you further organize your APIs in your API Center instance. And then the last one we have here is environments, where you can basically, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter where your APIs are deployed. You can actually have them sitting on different deployment locations, and then have this one centralized way of managing your APIs. So this is where you now set up the environments. If I go to create a new environment, you'd see that you would just provide some information, and then you can select the environment type, which stage is it running. And then for the server, we actually have a list of supported gateways and servers that you can use. So depending on where your APIs are being deployed and where they're sitting, you can actually just add that into the different environments. So I think that's pretty cool. A nice way to kind of have everything centralized. And then we have this API governance section, which I'm going to skip because we'll dig a little bit deeper into one of the demos for this. And then if you're using Azure frequently, we have the usual security where you can set up managed identity for your resource. And then of course, for the automation, API Center also has a set of CLI commands that you can use. So if you prefer working from your terminal, we do have several commands that you can actually use to create APIs, to register APIs, to update metadata, to delete API Center instances. And we have a full documentation that has all these supported commands for you. Next slide, please.
Right. Let me have a look. Okay, so next slide should be this.
Yeah. So we've seen a brief walkthrough of API Center on the Azure portal. So let's quickly summarize the benefits that this product offers, right? And before that, the building and shipping of APIs in an organization often involves multiple teams and several roles. For example, we may have API architects, we may have API or app developers who produce these APIs. We also have the API consumers who may be consuming private, public, or restricted APIs. And we even have the administrators who are in charge of ensuring that security measures are being taken and policies are being enforced to ensure that these APIs are being shipped successfully. So for the successful release and maintenance of APIs, these roles need tools and processes that will bring them all together. And one of those tools is an API catalog. So with that background, you actually see that API Center allows you to have that up-to-date inventory with all the APIs, as you've seen on the Azure portal, which gives visibility to the entire organization, reducing redundancy, and even having unmaintained APIs. API Center also allows you to enforce your organization's policies, standards, and compliance across all the APIs that are being developed. This way, your APIs won't be inconsistent, and they will all conform to the style rules that you all define. Then the API Center also provides a really nice way for you to have a quick discovery and consumption journey. So this is made possible by a VS Code extension. So we actually have the API Center VS Code extension that can help developers discover, try out, and consume APIs all within their development environments. Or you can choose to use an API Center web-based portal to easily navigate the APIs and their documentation. So that was just a quick overview of API Center. And I'm sure at this point you want to see how this looks like at a deeper perspective. So Justin, I don't know if you have anything prepared to kind of show how that overall experience is and perhaps any integration with other services.
Sure. So let me share my screen. So is it my screen? Not yet. Okay. So, so let's take a look at the sample repository we've got. Okay, where is it? Where is my report? Okay, here we go. So this is my the API Center I referenced before. You will be able to see the link on the chat side here. So which is the aka.ms/API Center-sample. So when you click the link, and you can go to redirected to this GitHub repository, and within here, we Julia just showed us the sample demos on Azure portal. So that's based on this repository. So all you need is there are a bunch of the applications already made, built, and API Center repository built, And also within here, there are preloaded the API samples there. So if you want to use this application, this sample, just clone or fork this repository to your account, then run it on the the Visual Studio Code. And what you need is to run azd up command. Then once you complete it, and it takes time. Once you complete it, and you will be able to provision all those resources, and even so we complete, and you will be able to provision API Center, as well as the external analyzer, which we will be discussing later. And finally, we will have the API Center portal as well. Something where we go. Okay, there will be API Center portal, so which will be discussed later. So these kind of things will be provisioned and deployed directly onto your Azure subscription. So that's as a result, you will be able to see these kind of the resources you will be able to see. So all the sample applications are provisioned within the Azure Container Apps and the Azure Function App as an external analyzer, and the static web app as the Azure portal, no, not Azure portal, API Center portal. So these kind of things will be able to provisioned and deployed with just one command, which is azd up. Now, so yeah, this is how we are playing around with API Center sample. Now, so let's talk about the linking, which is API analyzer. There are a couple of ways to check whether your API documents are compliant with your organizational policies. So one way is the linking your API document on your local machine with Visual Studio Code extension. So for this, you need to install API Center extension, and that extension will also install the Spectrum extension. The other way is that you simply upload your API document to your API Center instance through API Center extension, through Visual Studio Code, or directly upload your documents through the portal. Then it will automatically analyze this for you through because we have external analyzer. So Julia will walk through how it is working.
Awesome. Next slide. So I will share my screen, and this time I'll go to my VS Code. Justin, maybe you can just confirm if you can now see my VS Code.
Oh, hang on. So yeah, Alexia, could you swap the screen share? Here we go.
All right. Right. So I'm actually just going to quickly demo how with API Center you can easily just shift your linting more towards the left, and this means basically just having it earlier in your development cycle. So what I have on VS Code is the sample that Justin just showcased like a few minutes ago. And what I'm going to do is we actually have a project in Node.js implemented to showcase some of these features. So under the Node.js directory, I have both a web API and a web app. So I've already navigated into my API, which is just a quick Express.js project. And if I go back to the browser, this is basically what is being rendered. We have this Swagger documentation page. We can also just quickly test out the endpoint, see if we get our data. Yeah, so as you can see, the API basically just returns some random weather data every time. So we get some weather forecast data in terms of date, temperature, both in Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius, as well as a short summary. So just a typical simple weather API just for purposes of this demo. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to VS Code. And as you can see, for me to actually, let me just go back to the browser, sorry. And you'll see that we can now access the open API file. I can download it real quick. And once I download it, I'll just have it open on VS Code. And as you can see, nothing is actually happening, but we want to know how can we actually set our project to use a defined style center extension. So you can quickly just look for API Center. And here is the extension. So Azure API Center. I already have it installed. So I'll kind of see it here as an option. And once you click on it, it will list out the API Center instances that are in your subscription. So under my subscription, I have these 2 API Center instances. And as you can see, this is what I showed a bit earlier. This is a list of all the APIs that are in my API Center instance. So it's a quick way for you as you're building your APIs for you to be able to just see the APIs that are currently registered in your organization. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open the command palette. And as you can see, we have an option here to set an active API style guide provided by Azure API Center. And once I do that, you will see that we will now start seeing some errors. Let me just hope this is going to be visible enough. So you're not seeing any errors because I think this is actually like the corrected file. So what I'm going to do, let me just confirm something. I'm going to open my file, ensure that we are rendering the basic one. Okay, so I'm going to restart this. I'll go back to the browser. And then I'm going to open this in a new tab. And yeah, so this is what I'm going to save and open it in VS Code. So as you can see, we have very many warnings. And this is because currently now it has been set to use the default open API style guide. But what the assumption that we're working with here is that in your organization, you may have your own style guides that you want to be implemented across all the API teams. And so to do that, in this particular sample, we have the resources directory. And this is where you basically access a folder called rule sets. And you can now add your custom rule sets that you want to be implemented in your organization. And so to do that, I'll open the command palette again, click on select or on set active API style guides. And then I'm going to navigate to the select local file option to select the file that we currently have in the sample. So I'll do that. I'll grab that rule set file. And once I do that, you now see that instantly we are no longer just having warnings, but we're actually having errors. Some very specific rules that have been defined in our rule set. For example, this will actually, if the API version is not set in the correct format, this will actually throw an error. And that is what we are seeing right now on our file. So as a developer going through this experience, this ensures that whatever you're actually shipping is already accustomed to the style guides that have been specified by your admin. So to fix that, we'll maybe just add a quick V there. And as you can see, the error has gone away. So this is pretty much from a developer first experience. If you just want to do this as you work on your developer environment, that's how you can quickly use API Center to ensure that you actually get this working successfully. Something I forgot to mention is that for you to use this extension for this particular workload, you would also need to have Spectral installed. So the Spectral extension, given that API Center actually uses Spectral as the linting engine. So if you don't have it installed, you will be prompted to install it again. And then with the two, you'll be able to run it on VS Code. So what I'll also show is how this experience looks like on the Azure portal. So what if you just want to see how that would be from the portal itself? So I'll go back to my API Center. And I'm also going to open, I'm now going to go to the governance section, and you have this API analysis section. So what this does is that it will help you it will help you just have a quick glance of the kind of health of your APIs when it comes to the rule sets that have been defined. This is how you can manage and set rule sets for your organization. And then for each and every API, you would be able to have this quick view of the number of errors and warnings that your APIs have. And we also have this icon right here that will render an analysis report that will also kind of help you just dig deeper into what's causing all these errors, and you'll be able to now just get more insights in terms of how you can update the specification files to basically meet the standards that have been defined. So that's pretty much how you can ship APIs with consistent designs that are conforming to a specified rule set, both on VS Code and server side through the Azure portal. So back to you, Justin.
Right. So now let's move on to the next the feature we are going to show. So this time we are going to talk about the API client SDK integration. So we have our API Center instance, and that API Center instance have all the APIs for our organization to use. So when you start consuming your APIs, think about that. They need to be converted to the code base in your preferred language, such as JavaScript, Java, or Python, or C#, and so on. But it takes time to convert these API specification into the code. But what if the API Center extension automatically generate your client, the client SDK code for you? Do you think it would you buy it? I would. So the API Center extension also installs Kyoto extension so that this Kyoto extension will generate the client SDK based on your needs. So Julia will show you how to do it.
All right. So could you confirm if there's an echo? I think there's a bit of echo from my end. Hope that's clear now.
Yeah, that's okay. There is some background noise. Anyway.
Okay. Super. Yeah. So I'll quickly also showcase how you can use API Center to generate a client SDK for your APIs. And for that, I'll use the same sample. So let me just close this. And in the same sample, we also have a simple React web app. So I'm just going to navigate into the web app directory. And I'm going to run a quick npm start to start the project. And on our browser, this is what we should have. So we'll basically have a simple page that should ideally display some weather data. So I think there's some issue with my internet, but we'll move on regardless. Yeah, so this table currently is empty because we basically don't have our data ready. We have not integrated this with our API yet. And so I already deployed the API from the sample that has been shown. So let me just quickly show you that. This is the API already running. It's running in an Azure container instance. And as you can see, we now have the Open API spec file as well, which I already downloaded it before. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to open it on VS Code. So I'm going to open file. It's already downloaded, so I should have it here. Yep, so this is the Open API file. So what I'm going to do is, again, on the Azure API Center extension, and as Justin mentioned, for this, you would also need to have Microsoft Kyoto extension installed. So if you try to do this without having that extension ready, it will actually just prompt you to install it first, but I already have it installed. So what we will do is, the first thing I will do is to register this weather forecast API into my API Center instance. And to do that, it's pretty easy on VS Code, given this extension that has really streamlined this entire process. So I'm going to quickly register an API. I'll go with the manual option. I'll give it a name, so I'll just call it weather forecast. I'll hit enter. The type is REST. I'll give it a version, say 1.1. Let's say it's in the development phase. I'll give it a title, so let's just give it weather forecast. For the definition file, then we're going to select the file from here. It's this swagger.json. I'll import it. And instantly you'll see that the extension will create or rather register this API into my API instance. And in a few seconds, we'll actually have it shown right here. So it already registered the API, and now I can access it from this point. And if you expand it, you can now see more details from the deployments. You can see the versions. I'm also going to expand that and click the weather forecasts, one of them being to actually just open like the APIs, the definition right here using the Swagger interface. So you would be able to just quickly also test your solution from here. So let's just test if we can get access to our data. Let's try it out. And yeah, so we can confirm that we can access our data from this solution. But what we want to do is to actually generate an SDK. So we'll have this second option, generate API client. And I'm going to click on that. That's what we are trying to do. It's going to prompt me to open Microsoft Kyoto, but if you don't have it, it will prompt you to install it. So I'll click open. It's taking some bit of time. There's some lag on my end. Yeah, so once that process completes, we'll now see the Kyoto interface right here, where you can select the endpoints that you want to be included in the SDK. So for this case, I only have one, and I'm going to have it added. So yeah, basically just this is what we want to work with, and I'll hit generate. Once I do that, I'm just going to select the option. What do I want to generate? An API client. I'll give it a name. So we'll just give it weather client. Weather client. For the namespace, we'll also give it web app. Oops. Oh, I can't type for some reason, but web app dot API clients. Then we'll select an output path. So I'm just going to browse our projects directory. I want it to go, this is under labs, API Center, and the Node.js project and the web app. I want it to actually come here in this folder. I'll hit select, and then we'll pick a language. So we have several languages supported. I'll go with TypeScript. And then in a few seconds, so it says error generating, the client already exists. So let's see what we have here. API client. Yeah, that's pretty interesting because we do not have. Okay, maybe we can give it another shot. It's saying it already exists, but we don't have a client generated yet. Let's see if it's going to. We can give it a second try. It's pretty interesting. So open. We're going to choose that, generate an API client with a client API client. Let's see if this works. We browse an output directory. Yeah, that's a bit strange, but let's see if this works now. So in my SRC folder, just to confirm it's empty. So let's just select that folder. Select TypeScript. Okay, so the generation completed successfully. Let's try and see if we have anything created in our project. Let me do a quick refresh. So I'm having some issues with my internet, and I think that is what is causing this lag. But let's try and see. Okay, I may need to restart VS Code. See if I'll get it to behave. In the meantime, I don't know if we have any questions on chat that we can try and tackle as I restart my VS Code.
So we don't have currently any questions yet. But I have a question while you are restarting the Visual Studio Code. But so with this Kyoto extension, so Kyoto extension is automatically installed when you don't have it through the API Center extension. So when you have it now, so as long as you have the APIs registered on the API Center, and you can just simply use that registered API to generate client SDK, right?
Oh, yeah. So
you're super busy.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see if we can actually get through this demo. So it won't work. So I'm not able to access the client. But what we'll do, could we move to the next slide? I had pre-recorded this just in case a similar incident happened. So if we could just move on to the next slide.
Okay. So I switch to my screen. Then so where is my mouse? Okay. So should I click the demo?
So actually,
here we go.
So actually, let me try. Alexia, if you could just put my screen instead, because I would need. Yeah. So just share my screen instead. Yeah. Because I need to mute that and kind of just talk through the video. And we'll skip most of the bits that we've already done. So we had gotten to this point. So we just register the API. And then after this will open. Yeah. Then after registering the API, we then generate the SDK using the Microsoft Kyoto. So that's what you can see currently happening here. And we're just setting the output and picking the language to use to generate the client. And then once that completes, if you go back to your project, you should be able to basically see some set of code already written for you. So you can, and everything is already set up, like the request URL. And then for this particular sample, we'll just get into the weather list, comment the code that will basically talk to the client. We are creating the get weather forecast method here that will basically use the client and grab the data for us. And then we'll simply just display that data in a table on the application. So once you do that, you restart the application. And at this point, there's this interesting error that happens almost every time you're using this particular client. So I've also linked on how you can resolve that in the sample. And yeah, in a matter of minutes, you'll be able to see how you can quickly now pull the data from from an API, generate a client SDK using the API Center VS Code extension, and then have your solutions consume that. So yeah, I hope that's a bit clear, but we've also linked to this demo in the resources that we'll be sharing, and also in the sample that Justin showed earlier, we have all these resources linked from there. So I think we have time for one more mention. Justin, I don't know if you want to take it away with the Azure portal.
Sure. So yeah, thanks for your demo. Yeah. So it's like even if we failed in the life, but I think the recorded one is showed us the worth of how we make use of our API Center extension to generate client SDK. So let's switch to my screen. Then we have actually we have three the topics we need to cover throughout this session. So the first one was API Analyzer, and second one is client SDK generation, and then the third one, the last one, is API discovery and consumption, right? And the API discovery and consumption, is there something APIs through the API Center portal. So API Center portal is a website that you build and host to display the API inventory in your API Center. So with this API Center portal, developers and stakeholders in your organization can discover APIs and their details. So let's take a look at those interfaces. So when you hear, so this is Azure portal, and this is API Center. So when you go to the APIs, so I have registered these 4 APIs, and each API is different. Like a REST API, STOP style, the old-fashioned and the legacy web service style APIs, and even the newer one, like a GraphQL stuff in here. Now, so we register those APIs within the API Center. But the problem is that these APIs are only be able to see for the developers, not the stakeholders, right? Because stakeholders doesn't have permission to access to this API Center extension. So what we did is that we create API Center portal through the static web app. And if I click that, then this is the API Center portal. You can see. So as you can see, there are 4 APIs registered in the API Center portal, right? And based on that, you can log in to see those APIs. So we can choose like a REST API. Okay, so where is the REST API? And where is GraphQL API? Something like this. Okay, so we can we have only 4 APIs, but within your organization, as we mentioned before, more than hundreds of thousands of APIs within your organization will have. So in there, you can just simply search up those APIs, or the filtered by API types or lifecycle, these kind of things. And then based on that, decision makers and stakeholders will be able to see, oh, these are all APIs we have. So they can make a decision, okay, this time we are going to use this Stars API and Pesto API for a new API, for the new application, or something like that. So when I click this Stars API, for example, and then it says, okay, so this Stars API is currently used in the UAT environment. And in here, we can just simply use open the API definition on the Visual Studio Code, or simply download it from there. Then, based on this information, we can develop our API, our application, right? And if we click the Pesto API, the same thing with the version and definition format and deployment stuff, all right? Now, these kind of things. So that's the way of how the APIs within our organization is discovered and consumed through the API Center portal. Okay, so that's the end of the demo. Now, okay, so we have finished our demo. Now, so if you want to see the all the contents we covered, is that that link, aka.ms/API Center module, or scan take a screenshot of the QR code, then you will be redirected to our Microsoft Learn, the learning module for the API Center. Also, the demo we showed you throughout this session can be found in the link, aka.ms/API Center sample. Okay, and there are another link here. So there's another if you have any while you are using the API Center, and there is a feedback you can raise through the API Center GitHub repository. So go to the github.com/Azure/API Center. Then you will create an issue for your valuable feedback. And there are the roadmaps and all the CLI commands you can make use of while you are developing your applications using the API Center. And that roadmap will tell you which new feature will be available in the next couple of months. Okay. Now, I think that's it. Julia, do you have anything to share more?
Yeah, not really. I'm pretty bummed that the demo didn't work live because I'm always just excited to show how that kind of works, because I know that the team has really made a lot of efforts in ensuring it's as streamlined as possible. So I'm really hoping that you'll all get a chance to try it out, share some feedback, and even request any features that you would want to see implemented in API Center. So yeah, thanks for spending the hour with us. Hope this was helpful. You can always feel free to reach out and contact us in case of any questions, and as well as through the sample. So we are always actively monitoring the sample. So if you have any contributions, any questions, any feedback, basically you can easily just reach out and we'll be more than happy to help. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all so much.
Yep.
And thank you, Justin. It's been great hosting this with you.
Yep. Thanks, Julia, for your time.
Thank you both again so much for this session. Just jumping on what you said, Julia, regarding sharing some feedback. If those who are still in the audience have a few more minutes to share what you thought of the session, what you think we can do better, or any feedback that you have, feel free to scan the QR code on the screen or submit the survey at aka.ms/reactor/survey. The event code is 23553. And yeah, thank you again both so much for being here today and for this great presentation. And we hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.